and say, okay, if I got to play better defense, I'm going to do that. And I know I can pass the ball. I can pass it. I can take fewer shots. I can do whatever we need against a specific team or a specific week, or if somebody's not in the lineup. So shout out to James Harden, who skeptical of, not as much as Kyrie Irving. Kyrie played better defense last night, Tone. So how many nights are they going to be better, and how much better do you need to get to the conference finals? You know what I'm saying? You can't be giving up even this many and get to the conference finals.
Well, I'm going to go the other way on that. They can be as good as they want to be defensively if Kyrie and Harden and Durant buy in and say they want that. They don't have to be any better offensively because the three of them put up 90 last night, and Harden had a triple-double. And I'm going to echo what you said, and I'm going to underline it about Harden. I think Harden is the key to all of it for this reason. He's the one who doesn't have a ring. He doesn't have it. And he has the reputation of somebody who's a dog in the playoffs and who is selfish. So far this year, Mike, he's leading the league in assists. He's giving the ball up more. He's shooting a little bit less because I think he's on the line here. I really do. And like you, I think that's good. I will say this about defense. It's a statistic that I know you'll find interesting. Only 3 times in NBA history has a team won the championship without finishing in the top 10 in defense. You know where the Nets are now? They're 28th.
Yeah.
They can't see the top 10 from where they are.
Must be behind them. I don't know who else would be.
They're the worst. Yeah, of course they're the worst.
But Tony,
yes.
When you're that good at offense, I mean, the Nets can just roll out of bed and blindfold and score 100. So they know they can score 140 points. Is the incentive there? Durant's the only one who all the way from soup to nuts has been a great defender in the league several years, right through a championship. Yeah. Harden's saying and doing all the right things now. I just wonder when you're so good offensively, what's going to happen? It's going to happen.
Let me give you 2 numbers that you're going to like, okay? They are 7-2 against teams with winning records, teams you might see in the playoffs. But, Mike, they're 6-0 against the Clippers, the Celtics, the Bucks,
the best team.
The Sixers, Utah, and Denver. The teams that you'll see if you go deep in the playoffs.
Up for the challenge. They've been that.
Yes. Yeah. So far, yes.
Let's move to football, Tone, where the Texans are reportedly refusing calls about Deshaun Watson. Won't even talk about it. Bleacher Report talked to 2 high-level executives who say they've been rebuffed in their attempts to start trade conversations. One of the execs thinks Watson could hold out like Carson Palmer did with the Bengals back in 2011. In that specific case, Cincinnati waited until October before finally trading Palmer to the Raiders. Tone, if the Texans won't even talk to potential trade partners, could you see Watson sitting out the season?
Sure he can sit out. He's 25. It's not going to hurt his longevity in the league if he sits out 26 and comes back 27. It's like having an injury, except you didn't have an injury. It's different than Aaron Rodgers, who's 37, so you sit out 38 and you play at 39, and you don't know if you still have the gun that you have now. I think it's really different. I don't think Watson would be hurt at all by doing it, but there are 2 questions that will then come up. And one of them is, how badly do you want to get out of Houston, which we are not sure of? And 2 is, will you sit down with the new coach and the new GM? Will you allow yourself to be persuaded? Because, Mike, if I was Houston, I'd be doing the exact same thing. I don't want to lose this guy. I certainly don't have to lose him in February. Yeah. Well, what is February? I have no urgency in February. I don't have to do that. So
that's true, Tony. You mentioned by holding out in the prime of your career. We were pretty close to a guy, a Hall of Famer, who did that and made it work for him, although I think he still regretted it, John Riggins, who said, I'm bored, I'm back, I'm something else. I mean, you wrote about
I'm bored, I'm broken, I'm back.
Yeah. What a line. Yeah. And Riggins made it work, and they won Super Bowls. It worked.
Yeah.
But this is not something that, I don't know. I don't see Deshaun Watson doing that, Tony. I don't think he has to. I still think Deshaun Watson has some leverage involved. He could sit with them. He could sit with the new coach and GM, and he could say, you know what? Yeah. You guys major in clown behavior too often as a franchise. Not you two gentlemen, but that's what happens here. I don't want any part of this. And he could put their feet to the fire. I don't mean just not the coach, but the GM and the owner. Watson still has a couple of cards to play before he gets to sitting out a season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what his relationship is with the GM. Right. I don't know why that would be bad. Maybe with the owner. He would lose some money. He would lose if he just sat out off-season workouts and preseason workouts. He'd lose $2.4 million. If he sits out the whole year, it could go up to 40. But he's got a 4-year, $160 million deal, Mike. So he's going to make money on the other end of this. He pretty much can do what I don't know his leverage, but he can do what he wants. Olympic basketball begins on July 25th. The custom is that you roster needs to be frozen 3 weeks before the tournament starts. But the NBA might not finish until July 22nd. And if it's the Lakers and the Nets, then it could affect LeBron, Anthony Davis, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie. So Jerry Colangelo is asking the Olympics to be able to swap out players even after the tournament begins. Wilbon, should the IOC go for that?
Of course. Yes. Yes. I know the Olympic, ring heads, they want to act like, it's all about swimming and track and field and all this. And it is. That's what it used to be. But I know who the most famous people at the Summer Olympics are. Sorry to all my ringhead colleagues in the print business who hate seeing the NBA players there. Sorry, they're the most famous people. They get followed around like they are, the Pied Piper. I know how this works, and it brings in a load of money to the IOC. Of course the IOC should wait. Figure out how to move the dates of the tournament. Move basketball back. Sometimes you have like track and field 1 week, right, and swimming 1 week. Change it around. Do what you have to. Move it. Make sure you accommodate these players.
This doesn't seem to be that hard to me.
No.
It really doesn't. To your point, around the world, people in other countries really want to see how their players who are in the NBA do against our players, a complete NBA roster.
Yes.
And sometimes they are even teammates, which makes for some interesting storylines. Look, you've heard me say this a lot of times. The Olympics is a television show, giant television show. That's all it is. These are big draws on television, so I think you could accommodate it. What I would do, Mike, and I wouldn't move anything around, but I would say, I'll tell you what, you can swap out 3 people, but those 3 people have to have been in the finals. You can't swap out people who lost in the first round or anything like that. You give us a list of people in the finals that you want on the team, and we'll let you fool around with 3. It helps us, but it helps, you know what? It helps other countries too. What if Giannis Antetokounmpo is in the final? Well, then what? Right? So it helps Greece if Luka Doncic is in the final. You got to think about that.
You got a stage full of NBA international superstars. You want them in this, Tony. There's no question about it. And by the way, I know when you say this, you're hedging, because we all are. Because if LeBron wants to play, LeBron should be able to play. Carmelo Anthony should be able to play. Chris Paul should be able to play. These guys have played, and they have won, and maybe they wouldn't play. So we don't even know that. But the IOC should be accommodating, no question.
Yeah, and I don't think this one is that hard. You can, it's sort of like the Big Ten. You can make a rule and then make a new rule.
That's right.
That's what they do.
Change it up, baby.
Let's take a break. Coming up, how should Peyton Manning feel about making the Hall of Fame while his chief rival will be playing on Sunday?
It's called good judgment on the part of the Big Ten, by the way. Baylor beat number 6 Texas. Should the Bears be ranked over number 1 Gonzaga?
It's good judgment in the sense that it brings in
care. The Interruption is presented by Toy.
It's time to enter the octagon of lexicon. I like that. Let's get the first one from the producer over the loudspeaker.
Peyton Manning should feel blank about making the Hall of Fame while his rival is playing in yet another Super Bowl.
He should feel great. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he hasn't been sacked or knocked down one time in the last 5 years. I assume that the question is sort of to imply that he should feel bad, he should feel jealous. He would look at Tom Brady out there now and he'd say, I'm only 1 year older than Tom Brady. Why aren't I out there? Tom Brady's a freak. Okay, nobody is like Tom Brady. Manning doesn't have to worry about that. And let's be honest here. In Denver in that last year, Manning couldn't throw the ball 20 yards downfield. He was totally done, and he got out of there with a Super Bowl ring. Good for him. I think in his heart of hearts, he's probably rooting for Brady to lose because, if he's 2-2 in Super Bowls, and Brady would be 7-3, and then he would need binoculars to see Brady because Brady would be so far ahead. But he should feel great, Mike.
He should feel damn proud of his whole career anyway, and now his second career. One thing I will say is I can't imagine Tom Brady having the second career that Peyton Manning already has had. I mean, Peyton Manning may move to a third career. Peyton Manning, if you had to pick people in the history of football that you'd want to go have a drink with one day for laughs, who's higher on that list, Brady or Peyton Manning? On my list, it would be Peyton Manning.
Manning, and we should say that it's not official that he's in the Hall of Fame, but of course he's going to be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot.
Who's going to vote against him?
Who's kidding who? Now. Stop. Next.
After easily beating Texas last night, Baylor has a blank case to be the #1 team in the country.
Airtight, and I'm going to tell you why. Both Baylor and Gonzaga are 17-0 at the moment. That's equal, but Baylor has the best scoring margin in all of college basketball, better than Gonzaga. They have more top 10 wins than Gonzaga. They have more quadrant 1 wins than Gonzaga.
Whatever the hell that
is. Play in a, I know what it is. It's better teams.
I know what it is,
better teams. They play in a much tougher conference than Gonzaga. It's Baylor. If you lined them up blind and you read the resumes, you would say Baylor. And it is never going to happen. There's no way. Gonzaga's not going to be bumped for Baylor. It's not going to happen because Gonzaga's a basketball school, Baylor's a football school.
It's unimportant, the case to be made, completely unimportant. There's a tournament. This isn't the college football in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or aughts. There's a tournament. They're going to play. You'll find out. Now, let me just say this.
Wait.
Baylor
Are you saying the case I made was unimportant?
It's unimportant.
I made it. I was
There's a tournament.
I was great.
No, you were Hamilton Berger. We get you old again. Hamilton Berger won 3 times, just so you know. Baylor does have at West Virginia versus West Virginia, at Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and at Kansas. So they got a couple of games.
They're not going to win them all.
I'm not going to disagree about your case. It's unimportant.
No.
There's a tournament. We'll find out.
But even if they both go undefeated, Gonzaga will be the overall one. Wilbon and I are done having words. Let's take one last break, but still to come is the NFL right to silence the cannons when the Buccaneers score in the Super Bowl. What?
Fred VanVleet does something no Raptor has ever done. I just watched the Perry Mason the other night where he concedes to Hamilton Berger. Shocked me. I woke up in bed screaming. Nobody even knows who Perry Mason is in our audience anymore.
Yeah, I think that... Happy time, people. Happy 81st birthday, Fran Tarkenton. When Tarkenton entered the NFL in the 60s, there was one type of quarterback, the pocket passer. Tarkenton changed all of that. He was a scrambler, someone who was always running around to buy time to find a receiver. Indeed, his nickname was Fran the Scram. He was so good for the Vikings that he led them to 3 Super Bowls. He didn't win any, but how many Super Bowls have the Lions been to? In all, Tarkenton made 9 Pro Bowls, was the league MVP in 1975, and was elected to the Hall of Fame. When his playing career was over, Tarkenton went on to television. He was in the Monday night booth for a while, but may have had more impact hosting That's Incredible, a weekly variety show featuring odd guests. In the early 80s, a fellow named Earl Woods brought his 5-year-old son Eldrick on to give a putting exhibition.
Tony, you know, there have been essentially 2 great quarterbacks in the NFC Central since Fran Tarkenton retired. I mean, it was Tarkenton for all those years, right? And like you mentioned, he went to 3 of those 4 Viking Super Bowl. I think Joe Kapp lost the other one. But Fran Tarkenton, and then you skip all the way forward to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. But Tarkenton, he's still holding on to a place of greatness, even though he's been gone so long from the NFL.
I agree with that. Happy anniversary, Pete Maravich. This is posthumous, but on this day 51 years ago, Maravich scored 49 points against Mississippi State and became the first college player to ever score 3,000 career points. In those days, freshmen weren't eligible, so Maravich only had 3 years to do this. He played at LSU for his father, Press Maravich, and he rolled up scoring numbers that will never be equaled. Maravich averaged 44.2 points, Second place is 34.6. Maravich scored 43.8 as a sophomore, 44.2 as a junior, 44.5 as a senior. And this is before the three-point shot. Maravich had 56 games where he scored 40 or more, 28 with 50 or more, and 4 when he went for 60 or more. This is in a 40-minute game. His LSU teams weren't very good, but Maravich was astonishing. On a personal note, I got to see him once in person at Madison Square Garden in the NIT. He's the best ball handler and passer I ever saw.
You know, Tony, I think the only NBA player of the last 40 years who gives Maravich full due, always says, reminds people, wait a minute, don't skip Pete Maravich, is Isaiah Thomas. If we do the best ball handlers of all time, if we put Magic in his own separate category, I guess we have to have Maravich, Isaiah, Iverson, Kyrie. Is that the list? Did I leave anybody out? Steve Nash?
I'm just
that's
telling
list, right?
you that
But
Maravich in college.
Yeah.
In college.
I
the
saw a little
greatest
bit
I
of
ever
him.
saw.
Remember a little bit.
Yeah. Happy trails to cannon shots when the Buccaneers score in the Super Bowl. The NFL has decided that in order to maintain the integrity of the Super Bowl as a neutral site game, Tampa Bay will not be allowed to fire its cannons after a touchdown as it customarily does. The NFL believes that would be too much of a home field advantage. So in effect, they're punishing Tampa Bay for being the first team ever to play a Super Bowl on its home field. The cannons are a big deal for Bucs fans. Firing the cannons from that pirate ship in the end zone after a touchdown, that's their tradition. The club is promising to fire the guns like crazy if the Bucs win. But speaking personally, this is garbage. Let the cannons go wild after a touchdown, because that's the only reason to watch a game there.
Well, it's supposed to be treated as a neutral field situation, which is what the league is trying to do, Tony. And so, you know, there's only going to be how many Tampa Bay fans anyway out of the 50 or 60,000 people that'll wind up in that stadium, despite reports of 20. You're not buying that. Enough with the cannons. If they win, let the cannons go crazy after the game.
You're terrible to say kill the cannons. That's terrible. That's the reason to go there. And you still have 50,000 people because it's Florida.
It will be.
Nuts on that.
You know it's going to be that.
One correction. This is a major correction.
What?
Hamilton Berger only beat Perry Mason twice, not 3 times as
Perry
Wilbon
Mason
assistant.
lost
Twice.
3 decisions. At least 2 of them were to Hamilton Berger, and I think there was a third. The case of the wayward wife or something. I just watched this the other night. I'm still watching Perry Mason. And you should be too. You're an old man.
Who beat him on the third
Watch
one?
Perry.
Rudy Giuliani? Huh? Let's go to the big finish.
Let's do it.
Van Vliet put up a Raptors record 54 in a win over the Magic. Are you impressed?
Always impressed with Fred Van Vliet. Most points ever scored by an undrafted player. He is still, somehow, after a championship too, underrated. The Buffalo Sabres paused their season for at least 5 days due to COVID issues. Your thoughts?
It's concerning. When they were in the bubble last year, there was no positive tests among the NHL players at all. This is sort of like baseball where there's positive tests. Chris Archer is back with the Rays. Does that make sense?
He was 6-12 with an ERA of nearly 5 for the Pirates, and then he missed last season with injury. Sure, why not? Go back to a place where you had success and felt good about it. The Twins signed old man Nelson Cruz to a 1-year deal, $13 million. Is that deserved?
He had 16 homers last year in just 53 games. At 40, he's like approaching Brady territory. Last one, my Knicks and your Bulls tonight. What are we betting?
They're basically tied, virtual tied. The Bulls won the other night. The Knicks should win tonight, but I'm declaring this now. These Bulls are going to make the playoffs this year. Chicago Bulls back in the playoffs.